Yeah, with 4 days practice, you're never going to win.
4 day practice for this
for the fight.
First debut in professional.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I lost the fight by Kimura. He submitted me, and it's funny because the second professional fight I had was pretty much the same circumstances, but it was 1 week. So I had a load of guys going to fight in Finland. They said, "Oh, we have a guy pull out. Will you jump in? Will you fight?" And I said, "I haven't thrown a punch in 2 years, but you want me to fight?" They said, yeah, can you please help? And so I, again, just trying to be a good person, I'd just jump in to help. And I lost the fight again, but it was just poor preparation. I just wasn't prepared for those situations because I didn't give myself that time. And I just jumped in thinking about somebody else. I want to help you, not I want to help myself.
Yeah, sure.
And then after that, I thought, I can't.
The first fight is in United States or in London?
So my first ever fights.
Yeah,
so I used to fight, obviously back in the UK you have amateur and professional, but it never used to be called amateur. It was semi-professional. So the only difference was you weren't allowed to elbow. That was it. You could do everything else, you just couldn't elbow.
Sure.
And so we had lots of amateur fights, like every couple of weeks, every couple of months, and I did okay. Some I won, some I lost. But yeah, I did okay. But my passion went more to jiu-jitsu at that time. So in the end, I ended up sort of steering towards jiu-jitsu. And after those 2 fights, I just kind of think, maybe it's not for me.
The other difference is the elbow.
Sorry?
The only difference is the elbow.
That's it. The only difference was you couldn't elbow. That was it.
In semi.
So like you'd call it amateur now. So it's amateur and professional. The only difference in the rules.
In professional, I can use.
So in professional, you can elbow. Wow. In amateur, you can't elbow. You're not allowed. But back then, it was called semi-professional rather than amateur.
Okay, Paul. Let's go back a little bit from the beginning. You already said that you were involved in the sport. So how did you start it? Who do you look to train you at your very first start? And how did you transition from being like a soccer player, a football player, or a runner, or any other sport? How did you transition to the sport of MMA, which is such a difficulty?
I always loved all sports, but like I said, martial arts were the sport that I loved the most. And when I was at school, there was a man who used to teach Bruce Lee's martial art, which is called Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah. Yes.
And his name was Dino. And
Dino?
Dino Hayes was his name. And he sort of would move back and forth from Australia to UK. And he was teaching Bruce Lee's martial art. And because I loved Bruce Lee, it was just like, he just pulled me in.
Yeah.
So I started learning a bit of grappling, a bit of striking, and like Kung Fu. And that was my first experience of martial arts, a mixture of martial arts rather than like 1 or 2. I did karate and other stuff like that when I was young. And then from there, I started doing kickboxing. But I always liked the idea that, do you know what? I want to be able to grapple as well. I don't want to just be able to strike. I want to be able to grapple. So when I used to work in security, and a friend of mine, he said, "Oh, I know a guy that he's doing MMA. Do you want to give it a go?" I said, "Yeah, we'll give it a go." So I started like learning small group, 4 or 5 guys, MMA, and he was his name was Shane, and he was a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At the time, Jiu-Jitsu just wasn't in the UK really. It was in the UK, but we didn't have much access to it. So he was teaching us MMA, and we used to go to these little group sessions, and that was like my first interaction with MMA.
What about your parents? What stage did you start in the sports?
When you went to your home with blue stuff on your face, and they say, "You went to a fight?
Remember?
Are you fighting?" "No, Mom, I'm not fighting."
So like when I was younger, when I was younger, my parents, they didn't like martial arts.
Yeah.
They weren't a fan of martial arts. Their thought behind martial arts was, if you go to learn martial arts, it will make you fight. Not the opposite. It will make you more aggressive. It will make you want to fight.
Really?
So
that's what they thought.
That's what they thought at the time. So I used to just like not sneak off, but I would try and use my pocket money that I get, and I'd go and use that for kickboxing and stuff. But with nobody knowing. And that was like my first interaction with martial arts. But then when I started learning MMA, I'd moved out of home. Because like I said, I was late start, so I was 23 years old.
23 years old.
So I lived on my own at that
By
time,
yourself?
and I had a small boy because I was a young parent. So I didn't have to ask anyone then. So it was good.
Yeah, that's great. Bueno, vamos a hacer nuestra primera pausa en la noche de hoy y esto está súper interesante, señores. Mire, si usted se perdió la primera parte, no se preocupe, al final usted lo puede escuchar completo, pero avísele a su vecina, a su vecino, a su amigo, a su hermano, a su tío, porque aquí está Paul McGinty directamente desde Londres, Inglaterra, representante de lo que es MMA en el mundo entero, así que no se lo pierda esta entrevista y regresamos con más de En tu Zona Deportiva.
Y luego de esta pausa.